And sometimes all we need are those 3 to 5 or 10 people to buy our product, to show up to our workshop. For Free the Dream, it was those 87 people who came to that first Free the Dream conference, 2018. Sometimes it's just those first few people. And you know what? You move the needle forward for them. You encourage them. You motivate them. You inspire them. And in return, it was that validation that, yes, this is something that is valuable. Wow, I may not have been able to market this confidently and effectively as maybe I should have, but you know what? Wow, this is amazing, and there's a ripple effect, and this is going to inspire people. And it's that motivates you and says, I can do this. This does have value. See, the thing is if you never put that sales page out, if you never invite people to your workshop, if you never invite people to that conference that you want to host, you know what? If you never allow anyone to benefit from what you have felt God calling you to do, then you'll never know the value that it actually has. You know what? Your family deserves it. What is it? God wants it. Your family deserves it, and the world is starving for it. There is the world, and the world is starving for it. Does that mean everybody is out there starving for what you have? What I see is that there are some people out there who are starving for what you have, and it's only you. It's only your voice that they'll respond to. Anyway, this has been on my heart as I've seen other people struggling, and it's so funny to me because, well, these are things that, quite frankly, I typically don't struggle with, but sometimes I believe that God allows me to struggle with obstacles that normally don't impede my progression forward, but that people in my community are currently struggling with. And then just so that I can empathize with them, I feel like these obstacles become my own. And in a way, I get frustrated that I struggle. It's like, why on earth am I not just going into the studio and recording something? I've recorded nearly 4,000 podcast episodes since December of 2005. I could create an excellent, highly valuable piece of content any day of the week. You could give me 10 minutes and I could deliver something of value. You could give me an hour, I could deliver something of value. You could give me a 3-hour radio broadcast on live radio and I could fill all 3 hours with value. I am 100% confident of that. But yet, on Friday, there wasn't an episode. Why is that? Well, I'm thankful to have dealt with it myself. I want to continue to deal with some of these things that you guys are dealing with, and to let you know that I'm not perfect. I don't have this all nailed down myself, and I just want to encourage you. The world is out there waiting for your product or service, waiting for your workshop, your online course. They're waiting for you to create that next podcast episode, that next YouTube channel video, that next email newsletter that people have subscribed to. Matter of fact, there's one person out there right now waiting for you to ask them to buy something from you. I am convinced of that. And I could tell you stories. Let me just move on, though. I've got just to show you of the value that I know that could be brought to this episode, even though it's like, oh my gosh, I need to come up with something unique, something that's my own. I need to research a problem that somebody has. I need to see what maybe some of the wisdom that other people have shared on this, but then I need to take all of that, collate it all together, and then I need to come up with my own approach to how I would answer that scenario, that problem, that obstacle that people are facing, and I need to create my own specialized custom content, my advice based upon all of my research, all of my experience, what I've seen other people do, and here are my 5 steps to such and such and such and such. And then that's going to be valuable. But what if I just read to you some stuff from other people, like April Shannon? By the way, you can follow her on Instagram if you want. It's shannon.april.fitness, and it's Shannon, CHANIN .april.fitness. Anyway, April, if you listen to this, hello. All right, so moving forward, I want to share with you about a story that my friend Gina shared on Facebook today. And it is from a woman named Justina Blackwell Reeves on Facebook. She published this story on February 24th at 7:59 a.m., 2019. Anyway, she published the story. Now, she didn't attribute this story to anyone else, so I don't know if Justina is the actual author of this story, but I read it this morning based upon Gina Lipsky sharing it, and it had, I enjoyed the story, and I think you'll understand why when I read to you someone else's amazing piece of content. And I bet you that even though I didn't research this, I didn't creatively write this amazing story the way that it's written and come up with it all on my own. But if I actually just share with you that Justina Blackwell Reeves published this to her Facebook page, and I read it to you, I bet you will be encouraged. You'll be inspired in some way that this story, by me just reading to you, by me being an aggregator, if you will, a collator of content, that this is going to add value to your life. Let me read to you this story. She said, "You always hear the usual stories of pennies on the sidewalk being good luck, gifts from angels, etc. This is the first time I've ever heard this twist on the story. It gives you something to think about. Here it goes. Several years ago, a friend of mine and her husband were invited to spend the weekend at the husband's employer's home. My friend Arlene was nervous about the weekend. The boss was very wealthy, with a fine home on the waterway, and cars costing more than her house. The first day and evening went well, and Arlene was delighted to have this rare glimpse into how the very wealthy live. The husband's employer was quite generous as a host and took them to the finest restaurants. Arlene knew she would never have the opportunity to indulge in this kind of extravagance again, so she was enjoying herself immensely. As the three of them were about to enter an exclusive restaurant that evening, the boss was walking slightly ahead of Arlene and her husband. He stopped suddenly, looking down on the pavement for a long, silent moment. Arlene wondered if she was supposed to pass him. There was nothing on the ground except for a single darkened penny that someone had dropped, and a few cigarette butts. Still silent, the man reached down and picked up the penny. He held it up and smiled, then put it in his pocket as if he had found a great treasure. How absurd! What need did this man have for a single penny? Why would he even take the time to stop and pick it up? Throughout dinner, the entire scene nagged at her. Finally, she could stand it no longer. She casually mentioned that her daughter once had a coin collection, and she asked if the penny he had found had been of some value. A smile crept across the man's face as he reached into the pocket for the penny and held it out to her. She had seen many pennies before. What was the point of this? "Look at it," he said. "Read what it says." She read the words, United States of America. No, not that. Read further. 1 cent? Nope. Keep on reading. In God we trust? Yes. And if I trust in God, the name of God is holy. even on a coin. Whenever I find a coin, I see that inscription. It is written on every single United States coin, but we never seem to notice it. God drops a message right in front of me telling me to trust him? Who am I to pass it by? When I see a coin, I pray. I stop to see if my trust is in God at that moment. I pick up the coin as a response to God that I do trust in him. For a short time, at least, I cherish it as if it were gold. I think it is God's way of starting a conversation with me. Lucky for me, God is patient and pennies are plentiful. When I was out shopping yesterday, I found a penny on the sidewalk. I stopped and picked it up, and I realized that I had been worrying and fretting in my mind about things I cannot change. I read the words, "In God we trust," and had to laugh. Yes, God, I get the message. It seems to me I've been finding an inordinate number of pennies in the last few months, but then pennies are plentiful, and God is patient. See, my friends, were you inspired by that story? I was inspired by that story when I read it this morning. It's like, wow, I was not anticipating the message of this penny story, this "in God we trust." And I love this story for a couple reasons. Number one, what a great reminder of just asking ourselves, am I really trusting God in this moment? Just anytime I see a coin laying on the ground, what an opportunity for me to ask that question, a prompt, if you will. I don't know if I would go so far as to saying this is something God placed in my way, and God is using this as a conversational starter with me. But this is something that I know that I could adopt this and say, wow, I will use this as a conversational starter with God. And I love the fact that this very well, here, let me share with you some other things that I loved about it as soon as I read it this morning, why I loved it so much. Number one, I love that it's a story of a very wealthy man who lives extravagantly. I love that. I love that this story depicts somebody who is extremely wealthy, but certainly has not lost sight of his faith and reliance upon God. So many times in culture and in stories that we hear, wealthy people are taught that it's taught that the moral of the story is that if you are a wealthy person, you must be greedy, you must have got rich from taking from the poor and blah, 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 blah. And so I love that this story, it goes out of the way not just to talk about how wealthy this man is, the nice area that he lives in, that the cars that are in this neighborhood are more expensive than the home that Arlene lived in. But the story goes out of its way to talk about how generous this man was as a host. And not to mention the fact that this man obviously very clearly takes his faith seriously and even admits, wow, before I'm going to look at this penny, I'm going to see that inscription, but before I pick it up, by picking the penny up, I am saying, and putting it in my pocket, I am acknowledging, yes, I now, whether I was before I put this in my pocket or before I picked it up on the ground, I'm checking myself, and oh my gosh, I do realize I've fallen back into that old habit of trusting in myself, trusting in my